Welcome to Pay-to-Play Report for Settlers Rise of an Empire. This is a 6 settler game in the series and usually referred to as the Settler 6, even though it's not numbered here in the main menu. It's a PC exclusive game and the city builder game with a light real-time strategy elements to it. I'm using the History Edition here, and History Edition also includes the Eastern Realm expansion, which I will be using to show you the game, because Eastern Realm expansion has additional mechanics and buildings added to the game. While we're here right now, let's talk about what's available for you. In terms of video settings, right there you can see them. I think it's at high quality. For me, it doesn't take much to run this game. You can look at the hardware description under the video for what I'm using to run this game. It's an older game, so it should run pretty fine. You already might have noticed the high FPS count here for the game. It's only high in the main menu. Once you're in the game itself, it runs above 660 FPS, but it doesn't go really into thousands or something like that crazy. Also, what I should mention is that I don't see ability to put this game into borderless window mode, which is a bit annoying, I found. So let's move on to the actual game and let's see the actual game and how it plays. So let me show you the gameplay itself. So there, let's load up the starting section of how usually we would start out in the game itself. Right there, here we are. This is what we usually start out. This is our main area, and at some point I believe, yes, there you go, we are given the objectives here, and so I'm not gonna listen to the objectives here. I'm just gonna continue on to show you the gameplay, because I already know what the objective is. So, like I said, this is our main area, and you're gonna have 3 buildings to start off with. Usually the castle, which controls the number of military units you can have, the cathedral, which controls the number of workers you can have, and the storehouse, which controls the amount of goods that you extracted can be stored here. All of them can be upgraded to increase the capacity and the number of units you can control. The upgrades also required for you to improve your kind of rank of your hero, which will open up more new buildings. So right here, when I click here, it tells me that the next title will be Sheriff and what I need to do in order to achieve that title. So I'm gonna look around. I know that I have fish here, so therefore I'm gonna build a fishing hut right here, and I'm gonna build a road to it. Now, roads are important because this is what your settlers will be using to get to the actual buildings. They can walk across the normal ground as well, but it will be slower. Walking along the roads, they walk faster, and the paved roads, if you want to pave the roads, when you should pave roads eventually, because it decreases the speed of your settlers even further. So besides a fishing hut, I can build, but let's see, a woodcutter, because most buildings require wood in this game, so we should have a woodcutter here, right there, and we connect it by the road, and another road I'm gonna build here. As you can see, settlers will choose the most optimal path as they see fit, not that they're gonna prefer a road over the most optimal path. There are some issues with spy finding that we'll talk about later on. So once you build a building, it's possible to upgrade the building. Here there's a click to upgrade, and another settler will set out to go and upgrade the building. So right now I have only 1 settler working here. You can have up to 3 settlers working in the building. Now it's not enough to have the fishing hut to produce fish. You actually, in order to make it edible, you need to build a building like this, like a smokehouse, which will smoke the fish so that your settlers can eat. Settlers have their needs for food, clothes, healthcare type of things, cleanliness. So all this needs to be attended to in this game. So as we slowly build up things, I'll be able to kind of satisfy all those needs, and the settlers will become happier and happier. Right here we have a tracker that tracks how happy settlers are. It also tells me how many settlers I have, how many military units I have, overall city reputation here. I know the FPS count is kind of slightly blocking this information, but it's there. And finally, there's also how many married settlers there are. Now, the idea of married settlers is important one here, because the extra settlers that you can then use in the buildings to produce things are the spouses of your primary settlers. So like I said, you can upgrade the building 3 times. That means you're gonna have 3 settlers in it. With the resource extracting buildings, that will also change how much of a resource they can store inside the building itself. So right here now we have 6. This first starting out with 1 settler, you can store up to 3. Then with 2 it's 6, with 3 it's 9. It will also change the way they transport the resources that they extracted back to the storehouse. The more settlers you have in the building, the faster they transport it. All resources have to go through storehouse. There's no other way to do it. The settlers will not, the settlers who fish will not transport these resources straight to the smokehouse. Instead, they will always take it to the storehouse, and then the workers in the smokehouse will take it from the storehouse and bring it. Now, talking about the spouses. So, having spouses for the settlers increases production because now it multiplies the amount of workers you have at each building. So we can upgrade up to 3, but then with spouses it could reach up to 6. So production will go faster. Well, that's the basics of the game itself. Let's look at something more advanced where the game is much further ahead, so we can see more buildings and so on. And how overall the game looks in more, well, in further state of the gameplay itself. So I'm gonna jump forward here, and I'm gonna take this time to talk about the story in the game. The main game has a story about building an empire and fighting against the adversary known as the Red Prince. The expansion has a story where now the empire is helping a neighboring kingdom. So here we are at a further, more developed town. As you can see, visually the game is really good now. Now we see a much more busier town, and it's pretty easy to tell what's what and who the workers are. This is our military units. It's also possible to tell what they are. Here's a hero. Different buildings here are very much distinct, and it's pretty possible pretty quickly to learn what they do. Certain buildings also look similar to each other. So let's say the buildings that are responsible for health and sanitation, like the broom making building, the pharmacy. I should have also here the soap maker. They all have similar look to them. Weaver that makes clothes from wool, and the tanner that makes leather clothes also look similar to each other, right? So this is kind of the approach taken by the game. It makes it easier to see the buildings, understand them. Butcher shop and the bakery also look similar to each other, even though they all look distinct enough so to be able to tell things apart. Now, here we have the military buildings already built up. There are 3 military buildings, and there's a simple military units. That's the RTS component of the game. There's not much of a military strategy here. I'm not going to be showing you the military combat because it generally involves grabbing as many units as you have and attacking the enemy. Besides of that, there's also siege engines that you can use to overcome walls, and I'll show you the walls a bit later. There's different ones. There's a ram, there's a siege tower, there's a catapult. Catapult requires to have an ammo cart to refill the catapult ammo, so you need that to come along with it. Some missions will have this kind of a setup. This is a harbor, and the ship will come sail in, and if you send a hero unit here, you'll be able to buy some kind of special resources that are not generally available for you to extract on the map or overall at all. It could be such a luxury goods such as salt, incense, gems, and so on available. All that improves your city reputation. So I think I should jump a bit further to talk about, show you the walls and talk about the siege units, since I promised to do that. Let's jump to a section that has walls in it, at least shows the walls to us. Yeah, here's the mission. So here we have walls. That's like I mentioned, you use different siege engines to overcome them. Now, a note on the walls, also on the castle and on the outpost. Sorry. So those 3 buildings are the ones that will change depending on your locations. So there's the main game has locations for South Europe, North Africa, Northern Europe, and Scandinavia. The buildings will not military buildings, but these three buildings, the walls, the outposts, and the castle will change, will look. All the other buildings will remain the same. The expansion adds another location, just like India, along those lines, Indian subcontinent. Another thing to note is that the game uses weather. So there's a month that pass and weather changes. In the expansion, there's the idea of monsoon, when the rivers are flooded and cannot be crossed. In the main game, you can encounter situations where you have winter, which will freeze actually the rivers and open up certain areas to be accessible that they weren't accessible before. Finally, we also have situations such as certain crops cannot grow during certain seasons, or bees will not produce honey during certain seasons. So it will kind of change the dynamic of the production depending on the season and what you need to have build up to in order to not have your settlers starve or not to have them stop production, because if they're not getting certain products that they require, they will stop producing and they'll just be kind of protesting, and your city stops to function. Now let's talk a bit about outposts. I already mentioned them. Outposts is how you get new territories. So here we have different territories on the minimap available, right? So many of them are neutral, they're not controlled by any faction yet. But building an outpost is how I will be able to capture this territory and claim it for my own, and then build stuff on it to produce new resources for my main city. As well, we'll be building up smaller kind of settlements usually in those territories to provide resources and necessary products for the settlers, so that they can operate in those territories. So it's kind of like you have a main city and smaller villages around it. So that's the general gameplay of in the game. Story-wise, I already mentioned you, it's pretty simple, straightforward stories. Themes is good versus evil, nothing much there to say. What else to mention? Well, you can control the camera in the game. You can zoom in, zoom out. That's also possible. So you can rotate the camera, and I already showed you can rotate the buildings before building them. Let's jump into another save file, which will show you some of the additional buildings that are available in the expansion. And well, let's talk about such things as what else are available here besides the campaign. There's also scenarios available in each game. So here's the military units we have here, but we're not gonna focus on that. I'm gonna talk about specifically, like as I mentioned, is the additional buildings that you have in expansion. You can build wells now. Wells are something allows you to provide water to your settlers in the much more distant areas. Before, they all used to walk to the center of your main settlement, which is kind of strange, even though there are rivers and such where they could get water from, but they need wells basically. Wells can run dry, but you can send a geologist to revive the well, or you can just wait till it fills in with rain again. That's also a possibility. Similarly, the mines will run out of resources. In the main game they also run out of resources, but in this game you can send a geologist to revive the mine, but it will cost you. With each revival you get less and less of resource available to you, and higher and higher cost for that revival. What else we have here? Well, we also have something called a trading post available to us. Trading posts allow us to trade. Now in the main game we could trade through using storehouses. So usually you either send a hero to the storehouse, or depending on your relationship with your ally, you can actually trade directly. If you just click on the enemies, not the enemies, as the ally storehouse, and choosing what you want to buy using gold. Same way I can go click on my storehouse and choose what I want to sell for gold. But with a trading post I'm able to exchange resources. I select which resource I want to exchange for which other resource I want to receive in return. This is a great way of dealing with a problem. What I usually had in the main game is that sometimes you have overproduction of certain resource, you have too much of a certain resource. Let's say we have here honeybee combs, just way too many of them. Alright, so in the main game I used to just sell them off. Here I can set up a trading relationship such where they'll be bartered for some other product. Now this person will not receive honeycombs, but there are other settlements that will do so.
A cart has arrived, bearing resources.
So, what else we also have? Well, the game also The expansion has what's called a beautification type of buildings in the game, so you can build such things as sundial. Here we have, I think, have a brazier here. Don't have anything else yet built in this scenario, but it's possible to build these buildings to kind of improve your city reputation further. So we have here city reputation at 100, and it's pretty much so high because we have different resources available to the settlers. We have beautiful buildings, and we have also luxury resources coming in from different villages. So I think I just need to also talk about final mechanic in the game and its heroes. There are different heroes in the game. For each mission you get to choose which one do you want to use for the mission. There's an additional one available in the expansion, but they do take away some from the main game that were available. And each hero has their own kind of abilities, which add to it kind of changes the dynamic of economy or actual fighting against the enemy. So, for example, this hero, she is able to request tribute from the allied villages. Therefore, I'm going to get some kind of resource, random resource. It's a pretty neat feature to have early on when you're building up a city. Have ability to call upon that. It's not always possible from the mission briefing to really see which hero you would rather have for this mission, because it's not always gives you enough information to tell that. So I've been in situations where it's like, oh, I thought that this one would be a good hero for here, but I rather should have chosen some other one that would have been much better. But that's that's how it happens. But it's not, I won't say that's really a black mark against the game that much. I was able to play regardless of which hero I was using, different missions, no problem. There are a few issues in the game. Well, you can hear there's a voice acting in the game, and you saw that different heroes will talk and so on. There's also a problem with the voice acting. Sometimes it's delayed, sometimes it will jump forward and so on. And I just encountered some kind of weird FPS jump happening in the game. That's kind of weird. Usually it does not happen like that.
Loaded with barter goods is
So
underway.
I guess it's just maybe because I'm recording at the same time. The other issue is the path fighting. Sometimes, like here, we see cars are taking some kind of weird route. Not sure why they're doing that. Oh, in this case, this car just got stuck and it's not moving. This is actually more of a much bigger of an annoyance of a bug, because I had situations where the objectives are all listed here. I should have mentioned that. If you click on them, we'll tell you what the objectives are. So I had a situation where to fulfill objective I needed the car to move somewhere, but it just got stuck. So I had to restart the mission. There was no way to get unstuck. Similarly, at one point in the mission, one mission had an objective related to the trading post, and it wasn't working. The trading post was not sending goods back and forward, and so I had to restart the mission because of that. So a bit of a problem there. So I would say if there weren't for these bugs that I encountered, I would have rated this game slightly better. Right now I would say it's a good game. There's nothing really also cool in this game, so I would say it's an uncool game, but it does feel like a Settlers game. What's missing in it is a much more complicated economy. So generally we do have some kind of understanding here. We have earnings, taxes that each building has, but the question is how do the buildings earn exactly money? Well, it seems to be depends on purchases from those buildings, but where do settlers get original amount of money to purchase things? How do this, how is it decided that certain amounts get, how much each settler pays for what? How is that decided? It's not exactly clear. Do the settlers in this building spend their money? It was not really clear to me on those things. I did notice that eventually old buildings will start producing money, cash, and I can control the amount of how much I charge in taxes to none or high or normal. There's not much of a kind of in between there. Same thing, how much soldiers get paid. Soldiers have to be paid regularly. But if you have a balance of zero, the soldiers will not riot. They still will obey commands. That's kind of interesting. So like I said, the more detailed economy is missing. That's something that I would be more used to in the Settlers game, as well as there's no intermediate food production. So like I mentioned before, you might have fish that needs to be cooked to be consumed, but that's that's kind of straightforward there. But let's say when it comes to wood. Wood is cut. You should have a woodcutter here, and then it's just used straight away for building. There's no kind of plank production, something like that that used to exist in other Settlers games. Iron is mined, and then from the mine it's moved to the storehouse, and from there it's used for whatever production that requires iron. There's no smelting of iron kind of in between. So the gameplay is a bit simplified from the more, let's say, from Settler games that are 1 through 4. I'm not gonna. Settlers 5 is a bit totally different beast, I would say, when it comes to that game. So I guess that's all I had to say about this game. It's a good game. It's an uncool game. I enjoyed playing it. And, well, thank you for watching and for listening. If you like this video, please like it. If you didn't like it, don't like it, then please follow and subscribe.